everyone, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Warrior Show. I am your host Nilesh Jain, and this is where we are hosting podcast with amazing entrepreneurs who grow from nowhere to build a multi-million and billion-dollar business. And we are hosting interview with some of the incredible entrepreneurs. And today we have one of the awesome guests with us. So he is husband, father, and CEO of 500 Fortune, 500 CEO INC, author of The Entrepreneurial Personality Type, and co-founder of SimpleOperation.com, driven by momentum. He built $250 million company in his 20s. That is completely insane, right? And so many amazing things he did. And he is into business from over 3 decades. So, which is today's podcast is going to be super awesome. So, without further ado, let's have none other than Alex Charfen on the pod. Hi, Alex. I hope you are doing awesome. So, in today's podcast, Alex share a lot of things about team building, about growing momentum, about how you can scale from, how you can develop your mindset, how you can work on yourself, and so many things he shared in today's podcast. And it is going to be a game changer podcast that you are going to listen. So you can watch this episode till the end. And if you are somebody who wanted to learn how you can invite high profile guests on your podcast, and how you can build relationships such a big level influencer in your industry, and wanted to grow your business with the podcast, you can just drop a podcast in the comment section, or you can reach out to me. Till now, you can watch and enjoy the podcast with Alex Shafan.
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here today.
Yes, I am super excited for this podcast. Yes.
Well, it's good to be here, Neelish. I just
Yes.
saw your introduction. I saw a lot of my friends there, so I'm glad to be here today.
Definitely, it's my pleasure to have you on the show. So, Alex, you begin your journey at the age of 20, like 21. That's like in your 20s. So, your entrepreneurial journey begins at very young age, right? How did this experience shape in your perspective? And can you share your backstory? Like at the in your 20s, how did you decided that I wanted to choose the path of entrepreneurship?
So my entrepreneurial career doesn't start in my 20s, Neelish. It's actually, or sorry, Neilish, right? No,
Yes,
Neelish.
yes. You
Dang,
can, you can
Neilish.
use
Okay. Dang
whatever
it.
you're comfortable.
I'm going to do it. No. I've got to get it right. So
Yeah.
So my entrepreneurial career really begins when I was a kid. You know, I was
Wow.
very different. I didn't get along very well socially with other kids. I didn't get along with the teachers. It's not that I didn't get along. I just didn't feel like I fit in. So I was very different as a kid. And due to necessity, I started working with my dad when I was about 8 years old. And so I've been working since I was very young. And I had my first like businesses kind of in the 13 to 14 range. I like sold candy at school. I had a window washing company. Then I had a financial consulting firm in college. And then I moved out to Florida, and as part of a buyout of the consulting firm the financial firm that we sold, and ended up living across the country with no options, because I was supposed to work for a company for a year as part of a buyout of the company we sold, and didn't make it. I only made it 8 months. It was a really challenging thing to try and be somebody else's employee. And so I started a small consultancy when I was about 21 that grew a lot. And I want to make sure everybody understands it was we did about 250 million in sales. We didn't do 250 million in revenue. It was a multi-million-dollar company, but we worked with some of the largest manufacturers out there, some of the largest organizations out there. And when you ask how did it inform my entrepreneurial journey, you know, in my 20s, I was one of those entrepreneurs who put everything into my business and sacrificed everything. Like I had very little social life. When I started out, I was pretty healthy. I actually had done some bodybuilding when I was younger. I even did some modeling. By the time I was 30, I weighed 300 pounds. I was on 4 prescription drugs, or 5, and they were going to give me another one. And I went to my doctor for an appointment, and he told me I was his most likely case for a heart attack. And so when you ask how did it inform my entrepreneurial journey, you know, it made me realize that when we sacrifice everything for our business, we literally are sacrificing everything, and there is no such thing as success. And the other thing that really came out of that time period in my life was I worked with some wildly successful people who had started 9-figure companies or 8-figure companies, even 9-figure companies, massive organizations. A couple of them even got to multi-billion dollars or $1 billion plus. And what I saw was the leadership in those companies, the people that were doing well, the people that really had like fulfilled lives and companies that they loved were the ones who weren't sacrificing everything. It was actually the opposite. The more successful somebody got, the less they tolerated, the less they sacrificed. And so I saw this equation of like, hey, the whole world is telling me I need to hustle and put all my time into this and work 7 days a week and get up and grab a cup of coffee and go to work. But the people who are really successful are not doing that. They have very low tolerance for any type of noise. They have a tremendous amount of help and support. They aren't really involved tactically in the day-to-day of their business. So I think that really was the biggest influence on me as a young entrepreneur was, hey, there's a better way to do this. We don't have to kill ourselves to have success. In fact, killing yourself for success negates the very success that you're trying to get.
That's really inspiring and interesting at the same time. Like, starting your journey as a kid and then in 20s, and then a lot of different things happen. You see a lot of obstacle, but instead of giving up, you just be consistent with your effort and you put your 100% consistently without much thinking, and you become a warrior, as the name of the podcast is Warrior Show. So you become a warrior, right? And you just you mentioned that you work with the highly successful people and all of this thing. So when you started working with such a highly successful people, what was the biggest life lesson you got from these people? Like, one thing you already mentioned, they are believing in themselves. Like, they believe in self-care the most. Like, they believe that I need to work on myself, my health and everything. But what else did you learn from this super successful people?
I think that, to put it succinctly, the more successful in this was my observation was that the more successful somebody becomes, the less they tolerate. And people always, I've had the privilege of being around really successful people who have grown more than one 9-figure or even 10-figure company, people who have massive amounts of wealth, more than once. And they don't tolerate what the rest of us do. I think this is the challenge for us as entrepreneurs. If you look at the entrepreneurial mindset, when we start our business, it conditions us to do everything, because in order to be successful, you must do everything. And so what happens is, on the other side of that, we see the path to success as doing everything. And it's conditioning. It's psychological conditioning. We actually get trapped in this place of feeling like we need to do everything. And the more successful somebody is, the more successful somebody was, in my observation, the less they actually did. And so there's this conditioning in the entrepreneurial world that says, in order to create success, we have to do everything, or in order to start our business, we do everything. So it means we have to do everything moving forward. And the faster that we can let go of that, the faster we understand that it's not about us doing everything. It's about getting the outcome through whatever means is going to make it so that we're not burning ourselves out, so that we're not trying to do everything, so that we're not overwhelmed. And when we do that, that's when we really create success.
Yeah, that's one of the most important thing is, if we can choose a word, delegate, right? Delegate the work according to the person who is expert in that one thing. And your core expertise is also team building. Like, team building is one of the key factor in your journey, where you focus a lot. So how someone like the entrepreneurs can move from being a solopreneur to hiring a super ninja team member? Like, what you mentioned is really super thing. We are tolerating everything. We are not asking for help. Even we feel that, yes, even I suppose, if I can, instead of I can choose, even I feel I need a help, I'm not asking help. So being a solopreneur, how somebody can move to uh, hire a super ninja team for their business?
I think the first thought there is, don't put the barrier in place that every person you hire has to be an expert on exactly what they're doing, especially when you're first starting out. You
Yeah.
know, when I look at solopreneurship is the hardest point of entrepreneurship. It's when you're doing everything. It's absolutely the most difficult. And what happens is far too often when we're doing everything, when we're in that solopreneur place, it doesn't feel like we can get help. I'll share a quick story with you. So right now we're taking a group of people through our personal operating system as a promotion that we did this fourth quarter. And we had somebody in the group who said, that she's been a solopreneur for a couple of years now. She's totally overwhelmed. She's starting to make money, but she's still in a place where she's doing too much every day. And she feels like now if her business grows, it's going to break and she's going to start letting people down. And she said, I just don't feel like I can afford somebody. And I asked why. And she said, well, an assistant is probably $30 to $40 or $50,000 a year. And so I've been like waiting until I can afford that. And I was like, wait a second. Today in the entrepreneurial world, today in the world in general, there's more help available than there ever has been before. And it's easier to access. When we think, oh, I need to hire somebody, I need to go spend $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000. We need to look at the fact that today you can hire people internationally who are more than willing to help you, who are excited to help you for, rates of maybe like $5 to $12 or $15 an hour. And you can hire them for a few hours a day. And so what the challenge for most solopreneurs is they wait way too long to get help. And so we have a process that we put people through. You do a 2-week time study, and this is where you carry around paper. I have some time study results from me here somewhere, but
Yes.
you carry around paper and you write down everything you're doing in 15-minute increments. Getting the data on what your time and where your time's actually spent shows you what you can delegate. Then you take that 2-week time study, you take all the things out of it that somebody else could do or an assistant could do, and then find someone who can do those things. It doesn't have to be an expert. It doesn't have to be somebody with 10 years experience. It doesn't have to be somebody who's done all these things before. It just has to be somebody who is skilled enough to come in and start helping so that you can delegate things that are taking your time. The first thing we do in a solopreneurship is let's get you time back and let's get you leverage back. And so if somebody else is doing the small tactical items, you get that time back. And so I think for solopreneurs, the key is don't wait too long to get help. There's so many options out there that we just don't need to wait anymore.
Perfect. That's really interesting. And we have, if we can ask for help, we can definitely get help. So this is a quote. If you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
and here's the issue for us as entrepreneurs. Like I just want to validate the challenges in asking for help. The issue with us as entrepreneurs is that we need more help than the average person to get to our outcomes, especially if we have a big vision and big dreams. But any request for help leaves us feeling vulnerable and exposed. It's hard for us to ask for help. It's one of the hardest things we do as entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And so that's why we use a process. That's why we use the time study. That's why we gather the data. That's why we look at the fact that you can get your time back. And when you do, when you ask for help within a process, you start seeing the effect of what you're doing very quickly. I think so many of us have a history of trying to ask for help. We ask for help in school, or we ask for help in our lives, or we ask for help somewhere, and either the help was denied, or even worse, for some of us, we ask for help and we would get in trouble for it. We'd ask for help or we'd be reprimanded for it. And so there is a lot of psychological conditioning against asking for help and the vulnerability and exposure it creates. And so know that you have that. I have that. Every entrepreneur I've ever worked with has that. And the way we get over that is by using a process and structure to get help, and then start to trust that we can get help, and then we can get more.
Definitely what you mentioned is makes sense, and it's a mic drop thing that you just shared. So can you break down some process and systems that you are sharing with your clients? Like if you can share with us, like what's the process the people who's listening right now can implement into their business as well, like if 3 steps, 5 steps, if you can.
Yeah. So it's a few steps. So here's the goal in an entrepreneurial business is to have all the important things that are occurring in that business, all the important outcomes documented with process. And process documentation takes a minute. It takes some time. And so the way that we coach our members to do process documentation is to bring someone in and do the documentation with that person. And here's the simple process that they use. So they bring someone in who's capable of creating a simple flow chart. It doesn't have to be in flowchart language. And the entrepreneur and that person have a conversation and they document the process as it is right now. Now, this is really important. What happens for most entrepreneurs is when they start working with somebody on process documentation, they document what's happening today, but then they also start changing it. And they say, oh, it can be better. And we should have been doing this and we can be doing this. And so you don't end up with a clear picture of what the process is right now. So the first step is to document the process as is, even if you notice things are wrong. And so we use Lucidchart, but any flowchart software can work. You create a picture of that process. You use simple squares and arrows. So if it's like answering customer service emails, the first square might say you log into your customer service software. The second one might say what folder to go to. The third one might say this is what you do with each message. And so we document those processes as is. Then the second step is we make a copy of that process, and then we document any improvements that we see during the documentation. You're almost always going to see opportunity to make things better. We want to document the original, then we make a copy and we modify the copy on the same page in whatever software you're using. We make the improvements. So step one is document as is. Step two is make improvements. Step three is you turn that process over to the person so that they can go execute it and see that it works. And then step four is any change to that process gets documented in the flow chart. And so if you document as is, document improvements, use it, prove it out, and then make any improvements or changes in that process, you now have process documentation for the company, and the person who's running it can hand it to somebody else. The mistake that most entrepreneurs make, and especially in the early stage solopreneur, this is like the big issue, is that entrepreneurs get this thought process in their head that I'm going to hire someone as soon as I can document all the processes that they're going to run. And that is one of the biggest barriers to getting help that you will ever have. It's like, until I can do everything, I won't get help. And so instead, bring somebody in and do the process documentation with them. And, it might be a little slower. They might take longer to do it than you are taking. You get on a Zoom call, you record it, you give them the recording. They can, make that simple process document, then the improvements, then test it, and then document everything. And if you're doing this with your team members, you can have multiple processes being built at the same time so that you're really building the foundation of the company.
Again, this is something you break down each and every steps. Now the people who is listening, they just have to implement the system, because this is a proven system that works. And if you guys just go and implement, that brings result, and that brings money to table, right? That's really interesting fact that you just shared, Alex. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah. So you were worked with the billionaires and consultant with the major multinational companies, like as you already mentioned, like some of them are 8, 9, and even 10 figures. What are some of the common challenges you see that this level of entrepreneurs are facing into their business, and while scaling their business, and how they can navigate all of this challenge effectively?
So I just want to make sure I understand the question. The question is, what are the challenges that entrepreneurs face when they're growing a larger organization?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So if we're out of the solopreneur space now and we're talking about a larger organization, there's several challenges. So one of the biggest issues with growing a business is growing leadership. Because here's what happens at the beginning. We just talked about it. At the beginning, you bring in people who can help with tactics. You bring in people who can execute processes. You bring in people who can give you back your time. And what happens far too often is when a company takes off, the entrepreneur doesn't bring in leadership, because the first step to delegation is you delegate time. So delegating time means I'm getting my time back. Then the next step to delegation is you delegate outcomes. It means you say like, hey, here's what we need to achieve. The third step to delegation is you actually delegate success. Now, this is the hardest one for entrepreneurs, because we go from delegating something that is just getting something done to then delegating a goal or an outcome. But when we delegate success, we actually have to turn responsibility for the success of any project over to someone in our business. And what happens to most entrepreneurs is they don't bring in enough people with experience or with leadership experience. And so they end up still involved in every project and overseeing everything, and way too involved in the day-to-day. And so that's number one, is making sure that you're bringing in the right types of people. The second thing, and this is really important, is that somewhere around 99% of entrepreneurial businesses don't have a written plan that the team can follow. As your team, if you have a small team of 3 or 4 people, you can run that team by personality. And a personality run business means you're coming every day, telling people what to do, checking that it got done, and telling them what to do next. We call that transactional management. It is exhausting, that telling people what to do, checking that it got done, telling people what to do, checking that it got done. And oftentimes you check that it got done and there's a mistake or an error, and it sends us in an entrepreneurial spiral. It creates a tremendous amount of anxiety for us. Now, when you look at having a real plan in a business and not running it by personality, the problem with a personality run business is you're always the biggest bottleneck. There's always too much to do. Your to-do list never goes away, and you are always personally involved in the business. It feels like you're either pushing or pulling the business uphill to get it to grow. Now, the way you transition from personality to process run, like a process run business, does not need your personality there on a day-to-day basis. And what you need there is a clear plan that your team understands, because here's what happens. And I know a lot of people don't talk about this in the entrepreneurial world. A lot of coaches don't talk about this.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you don't have a clear plan for your team, you are committing to being the biggest bottleneck, because your team has to go through you to understand where we're going. If you create a clear plan where the team understands the projects at the company level, at the department level, at their individual level, then you don't have to be telling the team what to do all the time. The plan, the process runs the business or informs the business. And so when you transition from personality to process run is where you can get out of the day-to-day. Process run is where you don't get interrupted all the time. And process run businesses where there's a clear plan is where your team can get out in front of you. You call your shots, your team gets out in front of you and leads the way there, rather than you having to push or pull the team uphill.
Wow. That's really powerful thing. That's really powerful thing.
Yeah, it's life-changing. I think the challenge is that in the entrepreneurial world, especially aimed at businesses that are in that like sub $3 million, is we talk about marketing, we talk about lead generation. We don't talk about the structure that it takes to actually run a business and the process that it takes to actually run a business. You know, with our company, Simple Operations, we teach what we call the Simple Operating Operation System, the SOS. And it is a process for clear planning on a quarterly and monthly basis, execution on a monthly and weekly basis, and an understanding if your team is fully utilized every single day. And so if you don't have that structure that helps you do that, you will always be filling in with personality and you'll be lacking process.
Loved it. What a powerful insight that you just shared, that each and every step, like if you have a clear process, clear operations, everything, if you have in place, it can give you the better result and the best output. That's what you need. That's really you are sharing a lot of golden nugget, I can say, definitely.
Thank
So yes, now if we can shift the gears towards the mindset thing, like an entrepreneur mindset. So first, I wanted to know from you that you are in the business from last 3 decades, even more than that, like you begin your journey as when you are kids. And in the journey of entrepreneurship, we have a lot of ups, and at the same time there is a lot of downs. How do you deal with in your downfall time? Like how do you be in the momentum at the you also talk a lot about momentum, so your podcast name is Momentum. How you are keeping yourself in the momentum when you are in the downtown or down phase in your journey in your business?
I think what happens so as entrepreneurs, whether we're having a really easy time or a challenging time, we can create momentum. It's who we are. It's what we do. And I think if something's way too easy for us, we don't even pay attention to it. So let's just remember that we've chosen this path. Running a business is one of the most difficult things you will commit to in your lifetime. And it's also one of the most powerful, because you'll learn more running a business than anything else. And I think it's also one of the most spiritual undertakings, because it's an act of contribution, like going out, creating value, making a contribution through your business is like, to me, one of the greatest things you can do. Now, here's the challenge. We fall out of momentum as entrepreneurs when we are in constraint. Let me give you some, let me share my framework on momentum. So I feel like there's
Yes.
3 states of momentum for entrepreneurs. There's 3
Yes.
ways we show up in momentum. So the first one's when we're in momentum. It's when we're achieving our goals. It's when we're making things happen. It's when the world's following in our wake. What does that feel like for you when you're in that place of momentum?
I feel like I can do best. I can do more.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Yeah.
actually can do more. So Neelish,
Yes.
here's how it works.
Yeah.
So Neilish, when you, every time when you, when you're in momentum, 3 things happen. The first
Yes.
one is you are actually physically boosted. You have more stamina, you have more energy, you can get more done. The second thing when you're in momentum is you are actually like cognitively boosted. We actually can make better decisions. We see the future more clearly. We can see what we want to do. We make better connections. We see more opportunity. And when we're in momentum, we're actually chemically boosted. We feel the chemical high of being in momentum.
Yeah.
Now, here's what's interesting about us as entrepreneurs. The second state of momentum is when we're facing resistance. This is when we have an outcome we want to chase. And you've probably had this period in your life. It's where you want to go do something. It's when you want to make something happen. There's this tiny light at the end of the tunnel, and you're pursuing that light and you're pulling it towards you and you're compelling it towards you. And it's that point in your life, like when we're facing resistance, is usually when the rest of the world around us is telling us you're too old, you're too young, you don't have enough experience, you have too much experience, you don't have the tools, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have what it takes to do this.
Yeah.
But we trust ourselves and we compel ourselves towards that light and we step through it. And that's where we become who we are today. So when we're facing resistance, but we can still see a tiny light at the end of the tunnel, we can still see where we're going. We're still evolutionary hunters that are on the hunt. We create momentum. Now, here's the most challenging place for people like us. I define the entrepreneurial personality type as a physiologically sensitive, momentum-based being that is highly reactive to constraint. And here's what I mean about that reactivity to constraint. When we feel held in place, when we can't see where we're going, when we can't get into momentum, that's where things break down. And it's the same thing. When we're in constraint, it's the opposite of momentum. Our bodies break down. We actually get to the point where we can't do as much. We feel fatigued. We feel exhausted, sometimes right away. As soon as we recognize that we're in constraint, we're stopped. And it's not just our bodies. It's actually our ability to make decisions. We get brain fog. We can't see the forest for the trees. We get confused. We get frustrated. That is also part of being in constraint. Now, here's the big one. When you're in constraint, when you don't know where you're going, when you can't see that next move, we feel the chemical depression, the chemical suppression of being in constraint. And so when it comes to being in momentum, we have to be really careful with that place of getting into full constraint. And so in any case, for entrepreneurs like us, for people like us, there's always 3 things that are necessary for us to be in momentum. If you're not, one of these is missing. The first one is a clear outcome. Any period of momentum in our lives, we are pursuing something, we understand it, we have clarity. The second thing that must be present is some type of transparency. And transparency to me is like understanding, but it's also scoreboards. It's perspective on whether we are moving forward or not moving forward. And then the third thing that must be present is a clear understanding of what our responsibility is and what others' responsibility is. Like, what are we doing and what are the people around us doing? And if you're in a place where you're not in momentum right now, chances are you don't have a clear outcome, or it's not clear or compelling enough. You don't have clear measurement, so you don't have perspective as to whether you're moving forward. And then you don't really understand what you should be doing. And so when we clear those things up, when we create clear outcomes and a clear scoreboard, and we understand exactly what our responsibilities are, we go right back into momentum.
Powerful. Again, another golden nugget I can say. When the first point where you mentioned, like, if we have a clear outcome, then second you mentioned present, be in the present, and the third is understandable. Most of the time, what when I'm asking you first thing is, like, people have a clear outcome. They know, like, I wanted to achieve XYZ number in my business, or XYZ milestone I have to achieve, but still they are not able to do it. So might be you also come across this kind of things from your own community member, or might be from someone else. So did you find out why this is happened? Like, even after having a clear outcome, even after having a clear goal, why they are not able to achieve the goal they have in their mind?
I don't know. I think there's a combination of things. I think
Hmm.
for a lot of us as entrepreneurs, when we allow ourselves to get tactically overwhelmed, that's when things get really challenging.
Yeah.
I have a 4-part framework that comes from a lot of the research that I did to write the Entrepreneurial Personality Type book and the book that I'm
Yeah.
writing next.
Yes.
And when it comes to our personality, when we allow ourselves to get tactically overwhelmed, when we allow ourselves to get overwhelmed in the moment, that's when we feel that full constraint. And overwhelm comes from a pretty simple equation. Like this is how I see overwhelm. It's really just 2 things. It's high pressure and noise in your life. Too much is going on, too much tactically. If you think about when you were overwhelmed last, that was present. And the second thing that's present is an unknown outcome. You actually don't know what to do next. You might have, outcomes and goals and things, but right now in the present, you don't know what to do next. And so that tactical in the moment
True.
overwhelm can slow us down, can hold us in place. And
Hmm.
so here's the process that I use with our members, with my friends, with myself. I do this. I get overwhelmed in the moment.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened for a while, but there will be times where I'm like at my desk and I'm trying to do stuff and I feel overwhelmed and I feel like I'm trying to do too much and I feel like I've got too much going on. And so here's my process for that. And this is what I share with my members.
Yes.
Go on a 20-minute walk. And I know that when you're overwhelmed, the idea of getting up and leaving your desk feels like the wrong thing to do, but we need a pattern interrupt. We need a physiological pattern interrupt. We are
Hmm.
physiologically sensitive, momentum-based beings, so we need to move. And so when you go through for a 20-minute walk, the science behind it is that the bilateral stimulation of walking actually calms the nervous system and can clear out constraint and can clear out tension or frustration or any type of anxiety we're feeling. And so first you go on a 20-minute walk. Then you come back after the 20-minute walk. And because we're overwhelmed right now in the moment, what we need to do is lower that pressure and noise and lower any level of ambiguity or lack of understanding as to why we're overwhelmed. And so what we do is we have our members or me or whoever is overwhelmed, go for the walk, come back and write down everything that's overwhelming you. Everything that is causing noise, everything that's frustrating, everything that's causing anxiety, anything. Like you can write something huge, like we're not generating enough leads in the company, and you can write something small that doesn't seem, like significant, like the door to my office isn't closing anymore. And so like, what are all the things that are frustrating, that are anxiety provoking, that are challenging you? Get them down on a sheet of paper. And here's what should happen. You should actually feel a physiological shift. You should feel your nervous system get calmer as you write things. You should feel yourself get more in your body as you write things down. And at the end of the writing things down, you should actually feel much better. If you don't, go for another walk, come back and do it again. Now, here's why we do this step in the process. When we are overwhelmed and we're carrying too much around in our head, our mind actually amplifies the confusion. In order to get clear, we need to get everything out on paper. And here's what happens. It's just like when we say something out loud that's bothering us, it loses power over us. If we're overwhelmed and we write everything down on paper and we inventory it and we get clarity and we remove ambiguity, it actually starts getting easier. And then
Yes.
what happens for everyone is after you've experienced that physiological shift, after you feel your nervous system calm down, you look at everything in front of you and ask yourself, what are the next few things I could do to move forward? You don't have to get to the full outcome. You don't have to get to the end of your life. It's just, what are the next few things I could do to move forward? And here's what happens. We take pressure and noise and an unknown outcome, which creates overwhelm. And if we go through this process, we clarify today, which lowers the noise. We get everything out on paper. We have a partially known outcome, which means we know our next few steps. And the same energetic of overwhelm will turn to confidence. And I share this with people all the time. It's not until you do it that you actually feel the shift from the energetic of overwhelm to the energetic of confidence. And oftentimes for people like us, the difference between being overwhelmed and punched out and feeling like you can't do anything and being excited and being able to move forward and like get things done and get back into momentum is just clearing out that noise, that pressure that we're all experiencing and getting, like I said, clarifying what's everything that's going on today, getting a partially known outcome, and you'll actually feel confident. As entrepreneurs, as entrepreneurial personality types, we are that tiny percentage of the population that gets up every morning, goes into the future, creates a new reality, comes back to the present, and we demand it becomes real. It takes a lot to be able to do that. We are different than the rest of the world. And we also are programmed to be in momentum. We are epigenetically given the gift of being creative who can create momentum.
Yeah.
And all it takes is just for a quick framework to go from feeling like I can't get anything done to I'm going to get as much done as possible.
Super interesting.
Thank
Super
you.
interesting. And specifically the part of pattern interrupt. Like, go for a walk, do something and interrupt the pattern, change your behavior, change your physical behavior, like to get more done for and overcome from the overwhelming. That's super interesting fact you just pop up here on this on the show. Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Loved it. You just mentioned about your book as well. Can you share like one more? The name title is something very interesting.
Sure.
So
The title of the book is
key framework of the book.
okay. So
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The title of the book
Sorry?
is the Entrepreneurial Personality Type. And
Personality type. Yes.
the subtitle is Your Guide to the Most Important and Misunderstood People Among Us. And so
Yes.
now let's just give you a little of my background. When I was a kid, I had a really hard time with this concept of success. I didn't think I was going to be successful. I felt like I was different than everybody else. And I started reading personal development really young, but it started conflicting with each other and having some arguments in the books. And so I made the decision to just start reading about successful people. And I obsessed over the biographies and third-party accounts and stories and articles and anything that I could get my hands on about successful people. And the more that I read about successful people, the more commonality I saw. And what I thought I was going to see was that successful people were going to be completely different than me. But what I saw was the opposite. Here's reality.
Yeah.
Today in society, we have this equation that if somebody doesn't show up like everyone else or look like everyone else or sound like everyone else or learn at the same pace as everyone else, we need to diagnose that person, prescribe something to them and fix them. But history proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the person that doesn't walk like everyone else, talk like everyone else, show up like everyone else, and learn like everyone else is exactly the person that goes out and changes the world. I can give examples of this. Einstein couldn't tie his shoes, couldn't remember his phone number, and failed algebra. And he's Einstein. Thomas Edison was sent home from school for not being intelligent enough to be in school, and he became Thomas Edison. Helen Keller couldn't see, couldn't talk, couldn't hear, and changed the world for disabled people. When you look at the mythology around today that everybody needs to be standardized and corrected, the reality is that if you look throughout history, there is this unique personality type that is momentum based, that wants to make a massive contribution, that has innate motivation and just wants to go and wants to move forward and make things happen. My hypothesis, my theory, which I believe is complete fact, is that modern day entrepreneurs are evolutionary hunters. 10,000 years ago, you and I would have been the people who get up every morning, pick up sticks and stones, and go out and hunt. In fact, if I ask you the question, haven't you been on a hunt your whole life?
How in?
Haven't you been on a hunt for your whole life? Like you're hunting, you're trying to get something done.
Yes.
Something
Yeah,
happen, right?
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you look at who we are, I believe we have been through intelligent design and epigenetic programming. We are programmed to make things happen, to be in momentum, to make a contribution, to go out and start things, grow things, challenge the status quo. It's a survival mechanism to keep the human tribe alive. So as an entrepreneur, when you feel that overwhelming drive, that need to be in momentum, that compulsion to make things happen, that is a survival mechanism that has allowed human beings to survive. And you are one of those few people on the planet that creates the world around us. When we look at the screens we're talking about, the chair I'm sitting in, the desk I'm in front of, the home I'm in, everything was imagined first in the mind of an entrepreneur, and then it became reality. It's so incredible that we are in a situation where as entrepreneurs, we have been given the gift of being creators. We can go out
Yeah.
and make things, change things, challenge the status quo, make this world a better place. And we do it every single day. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're an entrepreneur, I want you to know you are part of the most important club in history. And it doesn't matter what issue or challenge or frustration you have right now. If you use the tactics that we've talked about to get through it, you can also listen to my podcast called Momentum for the Entrepreneurial Personality Type. It's for people exactly like us. And understand that if you are thinking about making a contribution, growing a business, making things happen, changing the status quo, that's not just an idea. That is your birthright. That is who you are. That is why you're
Yeah.
on this planet.
Wow. Definitely, that's powerful thing again. And you are always coming up with the next powerful thing. That's really powerful. I'm thinking like, wow, that's really, yes, insane. So, do we have a time or we are running up to the time?
Yeah, I've got a little bit of time. I've got probably about 5 minutes left.
Okay, yeah. So I think we can leave it here.
Okay.
Yeah, super awesome, Alex. Thank you so much for sharing a lot of nuggets on today on the Entrepreneurs Warrior Show. You drop down all the mic drops, like you drop all the mics, I can say, and all the golden nuggets. So thank you so much for sharing. So where do people can find you and connect with you?
So really the best place is if you're a podcast listener, I have a podcast called Momentum for the Entrepreneurial Personality Type. You can go to momentumpodcast.com and check it out. And right now, for the next short period of time, we're actually giving away a free digital copy of the Entrepreneurial Personality Type book. You can go to freeeptbook.com. So free, E as in entrepreneurial, P as in personality, T as in type, book.com. So momentumpodcast.com and freeeptbook.com. I'd love to connect with you, have you as a listener. And if you're an entrepreneur, there's a high likelihood that the Entrepreneurial Personality Type book will give you insights and validation of yourself that you've never had.
Definitely, I'll go and share all the links in the chat box. And thank you so much once again for sharing. Till then, everybody, share what is your biggest action steps that you are going to take from this one podcast, because listening and learning is not just important. Once after listening, what you are implementing is what makes sense and giving you result. So type in the chat box or comment section or whatever you are, wherever you're listening, what's the one step you are going to listen and go and follow Alex, find him. And the book that he is sharing with us today is really surprise for me as well, that he is going to give a gift of ebook. So definitely I'm going to show you the link. Till then, Elation signing off. Have a great day. Thank you so much for watching this video podcast till this point. If you are here till now, that shows you are committed for your growth, that shows you are committed to learn, committed to grow. So if you are somebody who wanted to learn more about interview podcast, who wanted to launch your podcast in 2024 or before, like right now it's about um right now the 2024 is about to come, like just 15 days are there. But if you decided like I wanted to go and do interview podcast, so you can join me on my next workshop. Just drop a workshop in the comment section or you can message me workshop. I'll send you the details as well. And if you wanted to work with me personally, one to one or done for you services, just message me. I'm just one message away and you are just one interview podcast away to grow your business. So you are just one interview podcast away to grow your business. Till then, Nilechan signing off. Have a great day. Have a wonderful